I don't think any of us ever said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a coach. I think coaching is a calling and it finds us. Nobody comes to coaching and say, my life is great. I just need some coaching. Right? They usually have some aspect of their professional, personal life or whatever it's just not where they want to be. Nobody buys coaching. They buy results. If you're getting into sales or if you're trying to market yourself as a coach, as we are talking about here, you want to focus on the whole, not the drill.
Welcome to Unlock My Coach, a podcast for seasoned, soulful, and successful coaches. In every episode, you'll hear incredible stories from coaches who are building their brands and making their mark in the booming $20 billion coaching industry. Who am I? Stacey Gonzalez, your host and founder of Unlock, a digital marketing and personal branding agency that helps coaches launch, market, and grow their businesses. Ready to unlock your coach? I know I've got your key in here somewhere. Welcome. On today's episode, we're joined by an exceptional guest, Tom Tonkin, who helps sales professionals and leaders not just meet, but exceed their targets through personalized coaching models. With a unique approach that integrates neuro-linguistic programming techniques and proven productivity strategies tailored for the sales environment, Tom empowers his clients to achieve ambitious goals while optimizing their personal and professional growth. Whether it's enhancing professional skills or finding fulfillment beyond and outside of work, they are dedicated to guiding leaders and sales professionals on their journey to a more rewarding and successful life. Welcome, Tom. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. And I hope I can live up to those words.
I know that you can. I know that you can. So let's just start out by telling me a little bit about how you define yourself as a coach. What does it mean to you to be is it a sales coach? Like, how do you define yourself?
I don't think any of us ever said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a coach. I think coaching is a calling and it finds us. And over a period of time, I found myself having a few gifts. One of them is I find myself to be a successful salesperson unto myself. I still practice that as a discipline, but I also had a knack of coaching and teaching really a lot of people. And the way I define myself is pretty much a combination of the words you used earlier. I think there is a sort of a theoretical model that underlies all of my coaching. And then somewhere along the line, someone's got to do something, right? Someone's got to sit down and make a phone call or send an email. All it has to be incredibly, incredibly practical. And that's really where I excel, or at least I focus on when I talk to people, is what is the operational definition of the activity that I'm actually going to have to do to make myself successful. And I spend a lot of time in that area because I'm sort of the academic whisperer, right? There's a lot of good studies out there about how people should do things, but eventually someone has to turn that into an action. Not only an action, but it has to be something that's uh, the ability to do it out of context. That's an important part of what I do. What I mean by out of context is sometimes when you learn a skill, and that skill is abstracted to a context. For example, someone says, "Oh, objection handling." That's a big one in
Yeah.
sales,
Yeah.
and they're taught in such a way that you have to sort of wait for the opportunity to present itself. When somebody objects in this particular way, this is what you can do, and people are super excited and they write it down and they sit around and wait, and for that time, and unfortunately, by that time rolls around, they forget, they don't know how to do it. So, if when I teach objection handling, you're able to start using that skill the minute you hang up the phone with me, whether it be objection handling with your spouse or partner, objection handling with the waiter at the restaurant, whatever that might be. So you can start getting that implemented on minute one, not even day one.
Mm. I love that. And I'm wondering, and I'm curious how the neuro linguistic programming or NLP kind of plays a part in some of these things because, the operational piece and the operational skill of objection handling is one thing, but being open and aware and understanding when to use that skill, how to particularly use that skill, what to listen for, right? How that kind of comes into play to help your clients be successful.
It's a excellent question, and what I tend to do in a lot of these presentations and podcasts is hopefully give people something that they're actually going to learn right now. Um, so
Oh, good. Are we gonna do a role play? I feel it coming. I'm
yeah,
nervous now.
let's do role play. We can do
Okay,
let's do
good.
maybe we can role play if you wish, but the let's look into neuro linguistics in itself, and I consider NLP kind of the greatest hits of psychology,
Mm,
and it is very operational. That's why I chose to certify myself into that discipline. One of the things that our brain doesn't process is negatives, right? So that's the premise. Let's just start with that premise. The standard one that everybody always talks about is if I were to say, Stacy, don't think of a pink elephant, right?
pink elephant.
How,
Yep, right
how
there.
big was it, right? One of the things I always test people is like, don't think of your favorite car. And then I'll pause and I'll say, what color was it? And they'll say, oh, it's blue and it's got these tires. It's got this. So we tend to do that a lot in standard conversations, but also in sales, right? We use negatives. If I were to say to you, and again, let's just work our way up to a real situation. Maybe children, right? Don't run down the hallway. What do? They run down the hallway because their brain heard and processed run down the hallway. And so they don't even pick it up, as opposed to a better way of saying that is, why don't you walk down the hallway?
Yes.
That's what they'll
Yes.
hear. That terminology, let's go back to a little bit of theory. That terminology is away language versus towards language. Away language is when you use negatives, towards language is positive. Now let's apply that to sales. If I were to talk to you about my product, and I'll say, my product is not very expensive, right? The brain heard expensive, right? So a better way to do it is, my product is value driven. My product is low cost.
Very affordable.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly, right? And it's a little like a little tiny thing, but if you start compounding that process and start using towards language, you will see a tremendous ROI in response. One of the tenets and principles of NLP is the person is communicating, are responsible for the communication, not the other way around. It's not like if I were to say, Stacy, I've told you 100 times, ABC, whatever it might be. If you don't understand what I just said, it's my job to, and the term I like to use is calibrate. I have to calibrate what I say based upon the responses that I'm giving you. And so if I say something and you don't respond the way I think you should respond. Maybe you didn't understand what I said. Instead of me repeating the same thing, I will calibrate and change the way I said the things, to eventually you will reciprocate with the kind of response or reaction that I was expecting in the first place. So that's kind of the nugget, or the sort of the theory in thousands of different ones. Right now, abstract that on a daily conversation, what a salesperson might have during objection handling or discovery or any of these other phases within the sales cycle. If I keep those in mind, I'm going to get a better outcome after that interaction with my prospect or customer.
Mm. So, success for you is being able to help your clients have greater success in relationship and in communication and in those really, I think we might have talked about this in our initial call, but people call them like soft skills, and there's nothing soft about them. They are indeed extremely challenging. So, can you talk a little bit about you and yourself as a coach? When you start to engage with a client, how do you know, like, what are the indicators for you that you're like hitting the right marks and you are having quote unquote, like what you define as success? Like, this is a successful engagement and it's really working well for us.
So nobody comes to coaching and say, my life is great, I just need some coaching. Right? They usually have some aspect of their professional, personal life or whatever it's just not where they want to be. And nobody buys coaching, they buy results. Right? So I got to tell you, I don't even care for the term coaching, right? Because it focuses on me. As a professor, I taught at the university level for several years. I never spoke of myself as a teacher professor. I was always a learning facilitator. It's the way I introduce myself because that's outcome based, right? The outcome is not me teaching. The outcome is you learning. Right? That's what we're shooting for. Same thing with coaching, right? The outcome is not me coaching. The outcome is you achieving something. And so if you come to me, number one, we'll define in great specificity what your goal is, what is the thing that you don't want. Usually people come to me very clear on what they don't want as opposed to what they want. This is my problem. This goes back to what I just said 5 minutes ago. This is away language. Tom, I don't want this job. I am not making my quota. Whatever the terminology is used. And so first thing we need to do is we need to reverse it. Great. You don't want that. What is it that you do want? Number one. Number two, we go through a very rigorous goal setting process. It's actually 20 different questions that are not just your standard goal setting terminology, but it goes into what's called the ecology, right? It has to be part of your belief system that you can attain it, and you can attain it within the context of your belief system. I'll give you a silly example, but it makes if you said to me, well, Tom, I want to be a millionaire. One way of being a millionaire is to steal $1 million, right? I mean, arguably we would achieve the goal, but the ecology is that goes against my value system. And so therefore that is not a way that's going to work for me. So what is in your value system? And sometimes in sales themselves, the nuance becomes very interesting as to how I actually want to go about selling. Some people, you've heard the terminology, they're hunters versus gatherers or nurturers, right? And I find sometimes people that are nurturers are not good hunters. And so it's like you realize that the ecology, your valuable system is not working. You need to change that. Maybe you need to change roles and jobs and give them a little bit of that insight. And so I use NLP to teach NLP, right? So I like to think I drink my own champagne. It's a lot better than eating your own dog food.
I love that.
Class here. But that's how I go about my coaching sessions, if you will.
Thank you for sharing that. It's important for people who are in these really important roles where whether you call yourself a guide, whether you call yourself a Sherpa, I don't right, put whatever word around it you want, where you really help people become who they believe on some level that there's possibility for them. And so I'm curious for you, as you've gotten to this really amazing place in your career. You've been doing this a long time. You've had very deep experiences all across the board in so many different facets. We have a lot of listeners that are new and are just getting started and just really want to figure out, how do I kind of be that coach, that guide, that facilitator of learning? So what are some of the mistakes? We don't call them mistakes, the lessons, right? That you learned that you can kind of shorten that learning curve for others. Maybe say, don't do this, like really stay away from this. Don't get scammed by this. Like, what are kind of the things that you've picked up on over the years?
So another NLP technique is metaphors and analogies. So I'll pick one of my favorite metaphors and we'll work off of that. If you're getting into sales, or if you're trying to market yourself as a coach, as we are talking about here, you want to focus on the whole, not the drill, right? What I see a lot of coaches making a mistake is they focus on a drill. What do I mean by that? So when somebody goes to a hardware store, they want to buy a drill, they don't want the drill. They want the hole that drill will make. However, when you walk into a hardware store, you say, do you sell drills? And the person that's in the hardware store is going to say, yeah, here they are. They're variable speed, cordless, 3/8. I don't even know. I'm not domestic at all, but, various things. And meanwhile, the back of your mind, you're trying to decipher whether this drill is going to make the desired hole you're looking for. As a matter of fact, that hole is probably going to serve, I don't know, hang a hang a picture, or maybe it's a big hole where you're going to put a fence post, right? And so a lot of coaches say, let me tell you the 100 things that I'm going to do. I'll follow up and I'll talk to this and I'll talk to that. And meanwhile, the person that's potentially going to buy your services or want to engage with you are like, how does that help me achieve the thing that's in my mind? And so now you've inserted friction into the conversation. And so my point is, I always coach, if you will, or salespeople, stick to what's the whole look like? What is it that we're trying to achieve, and point to that. I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see, not only in sales, but those, to shortcut it. It's like, now what I'll also include is those people that might be listening right now go, yeah, Tom, that makes a lot of sense. Your mind is now currently shifting to that. And now you're thinking, do I really have clarity on the whole, right, that I'm trying to provide, or the problem I'm trying to solve? And you may not. And so this is a great opportunity to sit down and say, what is that? What is the value that you bring, which is problem solving, whatever the problem solving is. And then say, am I equipped to be able to do those things, right? But again, nobody's going to call you and say, my life is great, I just need a little bit of coaching. Do you mind sending me some emails and have a Zoom session with me? Because that's really what I'm missing, is yet another meeting with somebody else. And I say that obviously tongue in cheek, as opposed to, look, I haven't achieved quota in 3 years straight. Right? I get that. That's a very common one for me. Right. And so I'll say, okay, what is the quota, and go through that rigorous 20 question problem. And by the way, I will go as far as saying the following things in my service. And yeah, this is a shameless plug, but I'll go with it because it's important to the learning process here. Is I do guarantee my results. Right. So there's a fee, obviously, as a coach, but eventually at the end of whatever we've decided the goal is, have you achieved it? Because if you haven't achieved it, I haven't delivered. So I've got to continue, and I will continue without any extra fee to get you there. Right.
Did you always do that even early on in your career? Is this kind of a newer concept for you, the guarantee piece?
Well, I mean, early in my career, no, because I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah, right.
But as I evolved, and I think it's important to understand the specificity of the goal is so important for me to say that. So it's not like you're going to come in and say, I just need, I need to make my quota. I mean, many times, like, for example, people will come to me and say, I'm not going to make my quota. Well, what's your quota? It's $1 million. Well, how long do you have? Well, you got 6 weeks. Okay, dude, that's not going to happen, right?
Right.
We don't have enough runway and all this, and that's expertise too. And I have one client right now that, I told him 6 months ago that he wasn't going to achieve his quota. And he was like, really? Like, yeah, you're not. And I'll tell you why. And, we've worked together. He continues to work. We're putting smaller goals together that can be achievable. And now he's come to the realization, we're sitting here in November, and he's going, yeah, you're right. I didn't see that. Right. Well, that's a little bit of the Sherpa, Stacey, a word that you brought up that comes to mind that coaches should be able to provide. And so, no, that isn't something, but I backed into it. And the way I backed it into is really being very specific about the goal, which allows me to create the strategy and sit there and go, I can actually guarantee the outcome of this particular goal.
So, as you start to think about where you're at now in your career, in your coaching, and where you are headed, right? We're at the end of 2024. This might be released end of this year, beginning of next year into 2025. What is your vision for the future? How is your purpose expanding and changing as you think about who you are now and who you're going to be into the future?
So I'm also a certified life planner. And the reason I am that is because that's usually where I end up with a lot of my clients. Not only that, but I also end up with a lot of personal things. Like, for example, this objection handling, we kind of chuckled that, you can do it with your spouse or waiter, but really, it's a very useful skill, even at a personal level. And so one of the things that I'm looking at is if I am successful as a coach, meaning you as an individual are achieving the goals you're achieving, what other services are tangential to that I can provide my clients? So the one that I'm thinking of doing is I have clients that have come to me that have made a significant amount of money, um, 2, 3 times what they've seen in the past. They don't even know what that means. They don't even, people are like, I want to achieve this. And then they get there and they're like, I got tax implications, investment implications, all this stuff. So I am not an investor. I'm not any of that. However, I feel compelled that I need to have an additional services. So one of the things I'm looking at doing is actually becoming a certified personal counselor, financial counselor, a counselor, mind you. Somebody that can say, okay, here's what I think you should do with this extra money that you made. Let's go get the right people to help. Right. So that is an example of, I think, what is coming next is what are the tangential services that you can continue to provide as a coach that are basically positive outcomes to your success. If somebody says, hey, look, I want to make a ton of money, that's great. Some people don't even know what that means. Some people know, like, what do I now do with it? Do I go buy a fancy car? And so it's like, no, because again, making a lot of money, certainly in sales or certainly in anything, is more about what does it allow you to do? What does it make it possible to do? I've always seen money as a tool, right? It allows me to give my kids good education. It allows me to um, invest in the future. It allows me to give generously. Right? I love, right, to give to my favorite charities and nonprofits and things that I believe in. Right? And I can do that if I have the means to do it. A lot of people don't give that a lot of thought. So
Mm.
if you're listening and you're thinking about coaching in a particular niche, what are the tangential things? If you were to achieve whatever that outcome is, what other services do you think you could supply? Because by the way, I surveyed my clients and I said, if I were to have said skill, would that be beneficial? That every single one, hands down, go, oh my goodness, I'd take you up on it in a heartbeat. So
Mm.
that's probably where I personally am headed, but really elevating it to something that everybody on this listening um, radius of this podcast could use is ask yourself those questions. What other tangential or adjacent services could I provide if I actually help my clients achieve their goals?
I love that you mentioned this. I asked my clients and they said this. I was meeting with somebody yesterday and they've got the concept. They're ready to kind of launch. They've got the LLC established, all the things, right? And they're like, now where's the marketing piece? And I said, you need to start marketing today. And they're like, well, we don't have the website yet. And we don't have this. And I said, no. You don't need the website. You need you and you need potential clients and you need to just talk to them. So who do you have right now in your network that you can start to talk to and ask these questions? Hey, if I had XYZ, what would be compelling about that? What would be interesting to you? You've got curiosity in the background of your photo right there. So that's really this concept of when we think about what we do in terms of marketing and branding, sometimes it's just as easy as what you just said, talking to your potential clients or current clients to find out. And then I love that because when you get to a point where you've kind of established a foundation, now you've got these other ways of thinking of expanding your services and expanding yourself because as you evolve and grow, your clients will evolve and grow.
I'll add to that because if you're a new coach or even a sort of a medium, tenured 5-year plus coach, there's fear in asking your clients what they want because it feels as if you should know. And I think that's a reluctance that a lot of us have, including myself in the beginning, is if I ask my client what they want or what they need, shouldn't I already know what they need and what they want? Um, that's very, very debatable, but the short term is no, you don't. Many times, I have to tell you, sometimes I feel like I'm taking people's money because I learned so much myself, right, as being a coach, and I'm very, very transparent on that. As a matter of fact, it's interesting because I am exclusively in the sales world. I have another business that I sell, right? That's part of it. That's just got to keep me nimble. And sometimes I bring some of those, not sometimes, all the time I just literally had a session right before this where I bring examples from what I did and say, hey, how can we learn together on what just happened? And it just gives my clients a completely different perspective because now we're sharing and they share and I go, is that a problem? He goes, yeah, that's a problem. Like, let's create a solution to that problem together. Give me some homework so I can help, solutionize, if that's a word, that particular problem. And it just only makes you better. It only makes you better. Like this whole thing I just mentioned about this financial counseling thing. Um, I don't know, but here's the good news. I will know, right? I mean, we all start with not knowing, and then we
That's
know,
right.
again, I pull out some theory. There's something called the Johari window. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but Johari window is basically a 2 by 2 matrix that says, if you and I were a comparison, right? There are things that I know and things that you know, same things that you know. Right? There's things that I know and things you don't know. And then there's things that you know that I don't know. And then there's the magical 5, right? Which is the things that you and I both don't know. And we know that box is full of stuff. Why? Because eventually we both know. So my point is, if you ask and someone says, yeah, it would be great if you had that service, then go find out, go learn, go know, go explore. I mean, that's actually the hidden joy that comes to me from coaching. It gives me the opportunity of going and solving these problems and learning on how to solve. And so, no, I encourage those that may have that feeling of fear, don't. As a matter of fact, I think those questions would be welcomed by your clients.
Yeah, and putting yourself out there. Don't be afraid, whether it's with your clients, whether if it's online, you have something to add to the conversation. You know something, to Tom's point, you know something that somebody else doesn't.
Correct.
So why not share that? Tom and I are very much in a big agreement of like, you give more than you ever expect to receive or take. And when you come with that level of authenticity and integrity, it always comes back to you in ways that you would never expect. And I know you've seen that through your career. The places sometimes you put out and then where the work and the business comes from, you're like, wait, how is that even connected? But it happens, right? And you know that. So we are at the point, it's my favorite part of the podcast, where we do a little hot seat and I give you, 2, 3 minutes and we're going to just get your clipped answers kind of at the end here. Okay. So are you ready for some fun?
Let's do this. Let's go.
All right. The value of working with a coach is
It accelerates your achievement to your goals.
the book I always recommend.
Atomic Habits.
Interesting, because you recommended E-Myth to me. I was waiting to see what you were going to say, but that was for me.
Right? Yeah.
You've always got a book. Okay, the superpower I bring to my clients.
I can see around corners.
My first client taught me
The problem is not always apparent.
one non-negotiable value I hold.
Transparency.
The wildest dream I'm manifesting right now is
I get to do this for a living.
I recharge and refocus by.
Alone time.
If my coaching business was a song, it would be.
Old song by Queen called Keep Yourself Alive.
Hmm. The biggest unlock I've learned being a coach.
Every interaction with somebody is a learning experience.
Hmm. Who is the coach you most admire?
It's actually the guy that got me started. And I don't know if you ever listened to this, but it was a guy by the name of Jeff Young.
Jeff Young.
He was always several steps ahead of me, and he knew it.
Do you still keep in contact with him?
Nope, I don't. But I have brought his name up in multiple podcasts, and I think he's probably retired.
Mm,
Just, I remember like it was yesterday.
love that. And then finally, in 5 years, I hope people understand the coaching industry is.
A noble one.
Hmm. Tom Tonkin, sales coach extraordinaire, NLP practitioner. Thank you so much for being here today on the podcast.
Stacey, it's been a sincere pleasure, and I hope we do it again.